Well, Belarus and Lukashenko read the newspapers like everybody else, and they know that they are on very, very tricky ground. A very large proportion of the people of Belarus loathe Lukashenko, loathe Putin, and would love to be free like Ukraine. So Lukashenko's got to be very careful of being dragged into a conflict which is not supported by his population. And again, if he's got an ounce of intelligence in his thick head, he will understand that he must do nothing to appear to invite the Ukrainians to have a go at the air defense systems in Belarus.
Украине есть чего бояться со стороны Беларуси?
Абсолютно нечего. Абсолютно. И они это знают. И военные это знают. Люди, народ Украины это знает. Но в силу политических каких-то амбиций эта тема подогревается.
It would be madness for him to actively engage in the attempts by Ukraine to strike Russia where it hurts, particularly Russian oil refineries. Remember, Russia is funding this evil, evil war with oil exports. And we were seriously stupid, I think, to lift some of the sanctions whilst the Strait of Hormuz was being closed on this account. So Ukraine needs to have a free passage to strike into Russia. If Lukashenko hinders that with his kit, and Ukraine has to take his kit out, which it will do, because for all his bluster, Putin is actually weak. He's feeding troops into a mincing machine. He cannot do it with armed force. He can't do it with boots on the ground. And all he's got are nukes. But nukes will never be used in that part, even if Putin would love nothing better than to lob a few nukes at Ukraine. I don't doubt that for a minute. But the winds blow across Central Europe, across borders. And any nuclear attack on Ukraine would lead to a general nuclear winter in the whole landmass of Western Russia, including Belarus and so forth. So Putin is absolutely not going to do it. And it might even cause us to want to strike back against Russia with America. And that would mean the total obliteration of Russia. So Putin's not going to do it. He's got to try and make the best of a bad job. But increasingly, he's showing he's intimidated, just like, in effect, he had to ask Zelensky to have his big military parade in May in Moscow, and he couldn't put some of the hardware out there because the drones would have taken it down. So now I should think he's telling Lukashenko, shout about this in public, but for God's sake, don't get at Zelensky. He's got itchy fingers, and he will take you out, your defences out as well. So it's not plain sailing. I'm not saying it's plain sailing. Ukraine has not won the war, but Russia has not won the war either. And if Russia doesn't win it, it loses the war. That's the point. Now, I definitely don't believe that Putin, demented though he is, vicious though he is, murderous though he is, would dream for 1 second of starting a nuclear war against Ukraine, putting nukes into them, and potentially a nuclear war with NATO. That really would be suicidal. And we come back to this point, what is in the minds of these people? And we know what's in Trump's mind. He didn't actually want to get into this silly war. He wanted to have a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, that's gone down the tubes. What does Putin want from this? He's not suicidal. This is a man who loves the fine things of life, the beautiful dancing girls, the horses, the personal trainers, the pools, his lovely palace on the Black Sea, his winter palace like the Tsars had north of Pisa. He wants to live life, actually. He's not got that much of it left. He wants to live it. He doesn't want to commit suicide. And that's really, really important. And I think the psychological aspect of this, what is in Putin's mind, that holds the key to knowing how to play him successfully. He's not going to use nuclear weapons because he would be suicidal to do that. It would be the end of Putinism in Russia, and he does not want that. So he is simply going to use force and threats and extreme violence. He's going to try and destroy everything he can in Ukraine with his drones. He got them too, let's be honest. Again, the Ukrainians have developed very interesting sort of defenses, including nets to stop drones getting through to the infrastructure. But no, Putin will do all the damage that he can do. He doesn't care if he's killed everybody in Ukraine, but we're not going to let him. And I think that is, key. All I would add is that all the shenanigans now in Sir Keir Starmer's government, I don't think Sir Keir deserved to be British Prime Minister, given all the mistakes that he made, and given his total failure to connect with the British people. It is amazing that he couldn't connect, but he hasn't connected, and that's part of the job of politics, to connect with the people you're trying to govern. It isn't particularly good news for Zelensky, however, because even though the policy, the Slava Ukraini policy, was Boris Johnson's, Starmer took it up and was a doughty supporter of it. Will Andy Burnham be quite in the same position? Should he be the next Labour leader? I would worry a bit if I were Zelensky. And again, time is here of the essence. If by effectively cutting Crimea off from Russia, it can change Putin's attitude, maybe an Iran-style deal. So a kind of peace, a first steps to a peace, not a big settlement like after the First World War, not an unconditional surrender like after the Second World War, but a kind of end to the fighting, a no man's land like North and South Korea. That really is in everybody's interest, if they're smart enough to understand their own interest. But most politicians are actually rather thick, and they probably don't understand what's in their own best interest.